Well, what you need to know about tariffs and why they could cause inflation. Today we're going to take a look. Stay tuned for Prudent Money. Good afternoon and welcome to the Prudent Money Radio Show. I'm your host, Bob Brooks. Thank you so much for joining me today. You know I do appreciate it. Well, if you got a question for me, please go to the website and I'll get that question answered for you. There's a lot of resources at the website and want to make sure that you know about that. If you do ever have a question or you need to schedule a phone call and you need more information because the question just can't get quite cut it on email, and that's the way it goes sometimes, just make sure that you check my calendar and or give us a call. I definitely want to be there to help you, and that is something that I make a strong commitment to. And that you can get more information at the website www.prudentmoney.com. We always post the program as a podcast, and we do it at kind of different times during the week. So on days like today, where I am recording our show today, and I'm doing it in the morning, I'm looking at what the markets are doing. And the kind of the cool thing about the stock market is that the market runs all night long. And you wake up, the market is already pricing in what the opening looks like at 8:30. So if the market opened right now for all of us to participate into it at 8:30, it would be the the Dow Jones Industrial Average will be down roughly 600 points. And of course that can change, no question that can change, but that's the way it is right now at this point. And a lot of that's because of tariffs. Now the tariffs, we're going to talk a lot about this today. Tariffs were no big surprise. And it was one of those things where President Trump announced he was going to impose tariffs. And, of course, they did happen on Saturday. And there's some retaliation that from the other countries that they are going to bring about. And, basically what you're doing here is you're starting an economic war. And first, let's talk about what happened, what a tariff is, and some of the other things that you need to know, because this is going to affect the market in some way, and we'll get a better sense of that throughout the day today. By the way, if you're just listening and you may be a couple days late, today is February the 3rd, 2025. But remember this, and I always want to go back to this and just remind you of something. When you see the market down, or if there's anything that can make you nervous, so for instance, once again, the market going down, or you just read an article how the dollar's going to crash, and you've read this, and you got this in a video, it was predicting that these bad things were going to happen. Just take a step back, take a big breath, and realize that this is all, anything anybody writes and puts into out there on social media is nothing but a speculative guess. That's it. They don't have. I don't believe that they've got the. Let's just pretend that they have that they do have the ability to predict and forecast and some type of profit. I have personally never seen a profit that is 100%. So, it's one of those things where it's all speculation, and depending on what their agenda is, will be how more speculative that they make it, or how less speculative they make it. More of it's not going to be that big of a deal. Most of the time you get speculative, pretty hardcore information on social media. That is when it's not fake. Because we don't know Donald Trump's agenda. We don't truly know what the end game is, and they could be in our best interest or not in our best interest. And this is with any politician, and this isn't a knock against President Trump. But we don't know the end game. And I think that we forget that sometimes, that we act as if we take actions as if we know what the end game is. And maybe you're so convinced that that's what the answer is, and maybe that you feel convicted to act on it. And by all means, if God's given you a sense of peace of that's where the answer lies, then go for that. But I think what we do is listen to too much on social media and watch too many videos, and we just get really, really wrapped up into this is going to happen, when a number of different things could happen, and some pretty bad, to some that weren't so bad. I always like to use this as an example. When you see way, way out in the distance a Cat 5 hurricane, you have no idea if it's going to turn. You have all the predictive models that say that it could turn, or you have no idea if it's going to turn before it hits the shoreline, and which would not hit your city, say Florida, and it goes more and hits Mississippi. Or you could have a Category 5 hurricane that dwindles all the way down to a Category 1, and it really just is not that big of a deal. So it's all speculative guessing, and just keep that in mind. I will say this before I go forward, that this second term Donald Trump is a little bit different than the first term Donald Trump. And the big difference is, during the first term, he was trying to figure out what he could do. And during his second term, he knows what he can do. He knows what he can push. He knows what he can, what he can say, what steps he can take. And I think it makes best way to put this, if you're taking it, I think it lends to on a second term president, now that they've gotten acclimated, that if their agenda is more of an aggressive one, which is aggressiveness. When I say aggressiveness, I mean to get things done. That can be a situation where you get to going too fast. You get to a situation which is the way he's always operated, where I've got 6 major things trying to get fixed at once. Sometimes you get ahead of yourself. Sometimes you make a mistake. Okay, so enough of that. So let's talk a little bit about what the news, besides if you're a Lakers fan, that Luka is going to the Lakers from Dallas, and the craziest trade I've ever seen as an NBA fan. But that's a whole different story. President Trump imposed tariffs on imports, and we're going to talk about what this means, on Canada, Mexico, and China. He did this basically as a response to a national emergency related to illegal immigration and the flow of drugs, including fentanyl, into the United States. The tariffs are intended to pressure these countries to take stronger action against drug trafficking and illegal immigration. The tariffs included 25% tax on imports from Canada and Mexico, with a lower 10% tariff on energy products from Canada, and a 10% tariff on imports from China. Now, which is interesting, that he only did a 10% import on China, and it may be that they already have tariffs in place. I just can't remember, that they never removed. So, which would make sense that he only did 10%. So here we've stated the line in the sand. We've stated the war that we are declaring And make absolutely no doubt about it. This is an economic war that we are fighting back to take care of illegal immigration. So basically what we're saying, if you buy things in the U.S. to a China, and that could be a lot of different things from, cherry tomatoes, I saw that listed, sledgehammers, anything that you can imagine. If Canada buys something from us, they buy an import, and they're going to turn around and sell it in their country, then they're going to be imposed a 10% tax to that. So where they paid, say, let's say they paid $1 for it, now they're going to pay $1.10. So we can put the economic squeeze on them by making their costs more expensive. But they could turn around and they could pass it off to the consumer. And if they do that, that's how you create inflation. And that's either the producer of the product who bought the product and paid the tax, the tariff on it, decides whether or not they include it in the price or they pay it themselves and they eat the cost. Either way, it's not a good situation because one leads to inflation, the other leads to recession. And we'll talk about this in a minute. When you get them together, that means there's stagflation. So we'll get more into that and give you an example of a tariff, which I think will help a lot. This is Bob Brooks. We're up against a break. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Hi, my name is Bob Brooks, host of the Prudent Money Radio Show. So let me ask you a question. Do you know your numbers? Now, which numbers are those? They are your retirement numbers. That set of numbers is the single most important planning numbers you can know. Yet the majority of Americans don't even know them. Prudent Money Financial Services, sponsor of the Prudent Money Radio Show, specializes in figuring out those numbers and creating a game plan to make sure you're on the right track. Listen to the Prudent Money Radio Show weekdays at 3 p.m. on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Hi, I'm Jill Taylor, inviting you to join me each Saturday morning at 11 o'clock for Choose Life Radio. You'll hear people from across America sharing their stories of faith, forgiveness, redemption, and restoration. Choose Life Radio will encourage you to fully appreciate the gift of life. You may also find help for you or a friend in need. So please join me Saturday mornings at 11 o'clock right here on Bible School Radio 91.3.
Dynamic, practical, life-changing.
There's no point in going to church and not letting the Christ who gave birth to the church on the day of Pentecost change your life.
Join us each day as Pastor Paul Shepherd applies the timeless truth of Scripture to everyday life. It's Destined for Victory on this great station.
Weekday afternoons at 3:30 here on Bible School Radio, KDKR.
Welcome back. This is Bob Brooks, and you are listening to the Prudent Money Radio Show. We're talking about tariffs. We're talking about what's happening as far as the steps that President Trump is making and to take care of national security and do something about drug trafficking. And he's using these tariffs to do so. Now, keep something in mind. Let's call it for what it is. Tariffs, the use of tariffs, is a economic type of a war. And each country is placing tariffs on one another, making products more expensive, let me explain and go through this so I think it'll make more sense. Let's say that we have a widget that we sell in the United States. Let's say that widget costs us $10 and we sell it for $2. Well, we generally, those widgets that we buy and we sell in the U.S., we buy from China because they manufacture it much less expensive and we can do more with the profit on the U.S. side. So they sell us the widget at say $9. We turn around and sell it to America, American citizens for $11, whatever the numbers come out to, and that's the way we know. We know what that widget is going to be priced. Now, let's say with tariffs, we've placed tariffs on China. China's placed tariffs on us. And for China, it's only a 10% tariff. And they send us a widget based on our request, because we're going to buy that widget, and we're going to turn around and sell it to U.S. consumers. But this time, when we buy the widget from China, China is going to charge us an extra dollar or an extra tax or extra tariff to buy that. So where we would pay $10, we're paying $11, let's just say. Now, the question is, I'm the producer. I get that. I bring that widget over in quantities, and I put them in my stores. Who is going to pay for that tax that's back to China? It's going to get paid. But ultimately, who takes that tax and rolls it back to where either the producer eats it and doesn't make as much profit, or they pass it on to the consumer who pays more for the widget, and now they're in a situation, now that they're paying more for the widget, it's costing more, therefore we're getting inflation. So you see, what's interesting about tariffs is that you can either widen the scope on a recession because the producer is not passing it on to for whatever reason, they're not passing it on to the consumer. They're going half and half or whatever. They're losing money. You got the consumer buying the widget and buying it and paying for the widget plus the tariff to subsidize the tariff. Now they're paying inflated rates and they're losing money. And so you start to create, and we're talking on millions of products. So we have President Trump placed a 10% tariff on Canada, a 10% tariff on China, a 25% tariff on Mexico, and 25% on Canada. And so and of course, they're all retaliating, and they're going to retaliate with their tariffs as well. And it really comes down to two things. It comes down to who can last the longest, and what is the solution, and could this solution between the two countries, could it work out to where everybody saves face? So it's nobody's fault. Everybody gets a clean bill. Consumers are just glad the tariffs are over, and everybody goes along their way. It's all about saving face. And I would say that with President Trump, it's definitely about saving face, because he's taking action and he's trying to fix things, albeit at a very fast pace, but he's trying to fix things. So we're looking at another way to put it is economic war between several countries. And, you talk about risk in the stock market. This is a great example, because things can happen out of the blue that we're not expecting. And when it seems like every country is against us and they're going to retaliate, it makes for a dangerous environment. So we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But it is all about the retaliation. Now, Colombia, I think that they in the United States and Colombia made an agreement of some sort, and President Trump probably put a tariff on Colombian goods as the first, and did it pretty quick to show this is what happens, is that you back down and sign an agreement. So we will see. But as far as war goes, you have economic war, which causes, in this case, which definitely could cause further and greater inflation. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. And then on the other side, it can also create a recession because the producer, the business person that's selling the widget, if they're taking a loss or taking half of a loss, then their earnings are down and they spend less, and it's a cycle throughout the entire economy. So you have economic war, you have cyber war, which out of all of them probably concerns me the most. And this is why it's just so very important to practice proper cybersecurity measures when it comes to your computer and your phones and all that kind of thing. That's why when we talk about all of the consumer files that have been hacked, it's a backstory page of the newspaper or of the internet site. It's buried. Nobody pays attention anymore. And I came across something, I haven't read it yet, but I came across an article about how many times does it take for us to answer the phone from a scammer before they can use our voice and have a conversation without us when they have a conversation using our voice. I mean, that kind of stuff is unbelievable. And you think about AI as advanced as it is. So cyber war, and then actual war, that would obviously be the third part. Of course, the cyber award could really damage us. So where does this, just out of curiosity, we've been talking about this, so how does this affect interest rates? So you've got a part of the situation is prices are going up. So if that's the case, then the Federal Reserve Board raises interest rates. But then you have a situation where prices go down and you've got a recession. Not prices go down. Well, in some cases, but you get a recession because the small business owners are losing money. So you got this interesting situation between interest rates and that are higher and interest rates that are lower because they're trying to fight a recession. And then putting all that together, you have what's called stagflation. I know it made my head hurt too. So not necessarily a great place to be at the moment, but that's kind of, it seems like where we're heading. We will see. The last, I think, and for you historians out there, please correct me, the last time that we saw a tariff, a significant tariff, was the Tariff Act of 1930. And it was presented by Senator Reed Smoot and Representative Willis C. Harley. Now, remember, back in 1930, the Great Depression was occurring. It was a real bad time in the history of the country. It was signed by President Herbert Hoover on January 17, 1930. The act raised U.S. tariffs or taxes on over 20,000 imported goods. And it became, you probably may have heard it once upon a time as the Hawley-Smoot tariff. Many historians would tell you that the act and tariffs imposed by America's trading partners in retaliation were major factors of the reduction of American exports and imports by 67%, a reduction, that is, of 67%, and during the Great Depression. Incidentally, both of those gentlemen just tried to run for office after all this and did not get elected. And then you have to go back to 1828, the Tariff of 1828. So my point being is that we don't have a whole lot of experience on tariffs. They isolate you, they can isolate you as a country. They definitely don't do anything about pushing goodwill forward when you're trying to dismantle another country's economy. So it's how will this one turn out? Who knows? I've people that I've talked to that do know a lot more about this than I do say that it could be a one and done quick thing, but then again it could be And you always run the risk of this as something that lasts a lot longer than you would think that it would last. So we'll see. In the meantime, we'll be talking about that this week, is what do you do with this risk? How do you protect your investments, and how do you go about being the steward that God wants you to be? Well, we'll be talking about that and some things you should consider and get you what you need to know. Hey, this is Bob Brooks. You got a question for me, please go to the website at prudentmoney.com and send it in, because we are all out of time. Till we do meet again next time. Keep the faith and have a great rest of the day.
That's all the time we have for today. Questions or comments for Bob, or to find out more great information like what you've just heard, visit www.prudentmoney.com. Be sure to join Bob Brooks again for the next edition of Prudent Money.